We will discuss classifying polynomials. First, we need to know what a polynomial is. Looking at the expressions on this screen, which would you say are not the same or similar as the others? Of course, there are many ways to answer this question, but for our purposes today, the two I have identified are this one and this one. The reason I identified the first one is because this one has a variable in the denominator of a fraction, 2 over x, and the second one also has an x with a negative exponent, which would put that x in the denominator 4 over x. So what does this mean? These are not what we call polynomials, while the other three are. What is a polynomial? A polynomial is an expression with one or more term. A term is defined as any number by itself, a variable by itself, or the product of a number and a variable or multiple variables. A polynomial must be written in what is considered standard form. That means it's simplified. Anything that needs distributed or combined, like terms, are combined and simplified. And this is new. The highest degree of the term with the highest power comes first, which we're going to discuss what they mean by highest degree. It is also classified by its degree and by the number of terms that it has. The degree is the sum of the powers of the variables in the first term if there are multiple variables. So let's talk about how to classify these. A polynomial is called a monomial if it has one term. A polynomial is called a binomial if it has two terms. 3 terms is called a trinomial. And if you are familiar with prefixes, this makes sense because mono means 1, bi means 2, and tri means 3. After 3, we just call it a polynomial. If you recall from learning about polygons, the prefix poly means any number. And so in this case, 4 or more, we just call it a polygon. We don't have specific names for one that has 4 terms, 5 terms, 6 terms, etc. We do have names for the degree. However, I'm not going to ask you to remember the names of the degree, just how to identify what the degree is. So these things that I'm underlining in red, you don't need to memorize these, but you will need to be able to identify what the degree is. So if the term is just a constant, it has a degree of 0. If it is a first degree, that's linear. A second degree is quadratic. Third degree is cubic. Fourth degree is considered quartic, and fifth is quintic. It does continue, but like I said, you don't need to memorize these. We are familiar with these first 3. So that's why I mentioned them, but these other ones down here we haven't really worked with. We have seen exponents and powers of 3, 4, and 5, but we didn't relate them to a function or a graph. Okay, so let's put this all together. So 5x is our first expression. That can't be simplified, so the standard form of 5x is 5x. The degree here is the first degree because x has a power of 1. And there is one term, 5x is one term, that is called a monomial. For our second example, we have 2 things here that could be combined. So in order to put it in standard form, we're going to put our term with the highest power first, so that's the 3x squared. We're also going to combine our x minus 4x to make a negative 3x and then plus 1. This is our standard form version of this expression. This has a degree of 2, that's our highest power. And this ends up being a trinomial. If we look at the original expression, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. before we simplified, but after we simplified, there are only 3. So we must simplify first before we identify what type of polynomial it is based on how many terms it has. We have to simplify it first. Our third example is definitely the trickiest. So standard form, here we have x to the power of 1, y to the power of 2, x to the power of 3, y to the power of 1. 1 plus 2 is a total of 3, and 3 plus 1 is a total of 4. That means this term is going to come first because it has the highest powers, and this second term will come second. The degree is identified by combining the 2 powers in the highest term. So that's a degree of 4. And that's what most people will forget to do, is just combine those 2 together. Oftentimes I see 3. This is a degree of 4, and that is a binomial because there are 2 terms in our answer. Lastly, we have 8, which is a constant. That has a degree of 0, and that is a monomial.